Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Hutton. If I could go back in time, I would skip that first marriage. It's the summer of 1971. My head aches. I can barely keep myself awake in the darkness on this long, flat road through the rice fields and orchards north of Sacramento. I wind my way up into the foothills and the village where my life with this man was supposed to unfold like the 1970s fairy tale that it was. We even live in a town called Paradise. Most of the changes that swept through Southern California during the 1960s left me unchanged. I still shave my legs. I wear nylon pantyhose, even with sandals. I still iron my clothes and my sheets. The August air is hot and dry, and my tires roll across the rock parking lot in front of our apartment. The night is quiet. Silence waits for me to declare myself, to fill the heat around my body with confession. I shiver. I've just left John at the airport in LA, where he dropped me off so I could catch this late flight back to his brother, my husband. I can still see John on the escalator, turned toward me as it rises up and away. When we grabbed each other for one last desperate hug, the hopeful feeling in my heart tightened. I dreaded coming home. Now, driving long past midnight back to a man I no longer want to be with, my mind rages with uncertainty. Is that possible? To be so unsure of what to do next and so afraid of admitting my trespass, actually saying out loud, "I love your brother," that I can hardly focus on the road in front of my VW Beetle. A light is on, and my husband meets me at the door. I'm exhausted, I say without looking into his eyes. I just want to crash. I don't kiss him or touch him. One glance tells me that he is not happy. Suspicion fills his face, and I wonder if my guilty pleasure at having spent a couple of days with my brother-in-law, days of holding hands and smiling at each other and admitting how much we care for each other, I wonder if it shows. "What's wrong?" he asks me as I avoid looking at him. I move my heavy suitcase into the bedroom and make myself busy unpacking a few things. He grabs my arm and asks, "What's going on?" Facing him at last, I screw up the courage to admit what I've done. John and I spent the weekend together. I'm in love with him, and he feels the same. My words fall out of my mouth like rocks and land on the floor between us. He is incredulous. His expression is one of instant pain, as if he'd been waiting for me to misbehave all along, for the year and a half we'd been married, and the 5 before that when we'd locked onto each other and played like it was forever. But he can't quite believe it's really happened. My husband had won me with a fast car and some meaningful eye contact when I was only 16. We'd dated exclusively for almost 5 years before our extravagantly planned, color-coordinated wedding celebration made an honest woman of me. Premarital sex may have been the norm amongst my peers, but it was always a covert operation until the day it could be legitimized, sanctified. As an eager newlywed, I worked hard to do the marriage thing right. I cleaned and cooked and dressed and behaved the ways my husband wanted me to. Under his proprietary gaze, I posed at the kitchen sink, at the edge of the bathtub, with a scrub brush in my hand, at dinner in fancy restaurants, like the prize that I was for him on a pedestal of solidified fantasy. But now I have betrayed him. I've strayed with his brother. He turns and walks out the front door, slamming it hard. Tired and confused, I lay on the brass bed that John gave us for a wedding present, and I cry with my head buried in the pillow. I didn't plan this. Falling in love with John happened to me, I think. But letting myself act on my feelings is another matter. I'm not accustomed to thinking for myself and saying what I think and feel, much less acting it out. Eventually, my husband comes to bed and we have an emotional bout of sex. Maybe having sex will cement things back together. I don't see how it can. In fact, for the next few days, we talk and argue in anguish over the pieces of our broken relationship. All the while, I am thinking about John, who, by the way, is on his way to prison. The contrast between brothers is marked. My husband, a guy I belonged to for years already, is clean-cut, serious, conservative-minded. He struggles to keep the logistics of our life together under control. His approval is my unstated goal in all matters of appearance and behavior. He okays the way I dress, what I cook, and how I spend my time, and I submit to his authority. My brother-in-law, on the other hand, is a dope-smoking and selling, long-haired, bearded vegetarian with John Lennon glasses on his way to the Federal Correctional Institute at Lompoc for the attempted importation of a slab of opium. He carries 2 books in his backpack, Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss and Be Here Now by Ram Dass. He introduces me to meatless casseroles and herbal teas. He is an unlikely substitute husband given his circumstances, and my affection for him does not mute the emerging desire for me to belong to no man ever again. I'm not looking for a trade-in. I'm fumbling for a way out of that box. Within a week, boxes stack up in the living room. I sort and divide our possessions and pack up everything that's mine. I load up my Beetle and grab my cat. Overnight, I drive the 500 miles between Paradise and my parents' house in Southern California, putting a distance between me and my husband that signals the end of a marriage. I am relieved. I'm looking forward to my real life, the one not controlled by somebody else. I get a job as a bank teller, and I move into the back half of an old house where an orange tree grows next to my porch. The front half is occupied by a bunch of guys always on the lookout for some action or something to eat or smoke. We hang out together, and they respect my promiscuous independence, which I flaunt blatantly. On weekends, I visit John in prison. I tell him about my newfound freedom, about all the people, guys, I'm meeting and spending time with. Free love is my new reality, my choice to make. He doesn't ask me to sit at home and wait for him. He does ask how many men I think I need. As many as it takes, I say, not breaking eye contact with him. We hold hands in the prison courtyard and wonder what our future together might look like. Meanwhile, I am on my own for the first time in my life, and it feels like I've been let out of jail. I have no intention of giving up this new liberty to be for myself, whoever else comes along. While John is in prison, I meet Bob. Bob and I stay together and create our own little haven and home in the Sierras, not far from that duplex I lived in as a new bride. Bob and I co-own a natural food store, and he hand-builds fine furniture in our garage. Eventually, we start a family, a very self-contained nuclear one, in fact, almost middle class in nature. We've been together for 44 years now. Bob is someone who is committed to both of us being authentic and free to express what's going on, what's important for each of us. We support each other in exploring what it means to be human, to be living at this time. This does not mean our long marriage is one big happiness story, but it does mean that we can trust each other with our very lives. John died a few years ago. I'm not sure he and my husband ever made amends. Now, as mother of adult sons who have come to me on occasion with broken hearts, I can only imagine what damage I caused. It's the guilt and shame of coming between brothers that makes me want to erase the past. But maybe if I could go back in time, I wouldn't skip that first marriage, because no matter how dishonorably I behaved, it was only through leaving that I declared my freedom. It was my first step, my bold move out of the box I suddenly noticed I didn't want to be in, the one I agreed to before I even knew who I was. It was a messy act of self-expression, a declaration of who I am not, as I put my own self-care above others for the first time. Leaving saved my life.